It is just a huge, huge honor to podcast interview my first mentor in dentistry. I graduated in 87. I had you out consulting in my office. I flew my team, Lori Zalowski, Jan, everybody to see you so many times. And oh my God, 32 years later, I still hear Lori say, "Well, I don't think Sally McKenzie would do that." And I'm like, well, tootie to you. But so she is the president and CEO of McKenzie Management, a nationwide dental practice management company which Sally founded in Columbus, Ohio in 1979. Prior to, oh my God, 79. So you've done it 40 years?
Oh, Howard, please. Did you have to say that?
40 years? You don't even look like you're 40 years old. And you've been doing this 40 years?
When I was 6.
You started when you're 6? Okay, now it perfectly makes sense. Prior to founding McKenzie Management, she was an expanded duty dental auxiliary and business manager and instructor of dental auxiliary utilization with the Ohio State University College of Dentistry, which I want to remind everyone is not an accredited dental school. And Columbus, so that was a joke, Sally. She's also the owner of the Dentist Network electronic publication founded in 2006. Prior to founding McKenzie Management, she started one of the nation's first dental personnel placement businesses with 4 franchises in Ohio and started 75 agencies throughout the U.S. In 2009 to 2018, she was also the publisher and owner of the New Dentist magazine. She is a contributing consultant to Dentistry Today magazine since '83 and a top leader in consulting since '99. She has a weekly email newsletter since 2002. That's 18 years or over 900 published free articles she gives to her 170,000 email database. Her company, McKenzie Management, was one of the first practice management companies in the U.S. to be endorsed by a state association, the California Dental Association, from 2005 to 2011. She was a consultant to the Council on Dental Practice of the American Dental Association from 90 to 2007. She's lectured throughout the United States and internationally to the nation's top meetings, associations, dental universities, dental societies, study clubs. I mean, she's lectured everywhere. Sally is also over, by the way, Sally, this August 4th is my first lecture was August 4th, 1990. So my 30-year anniversary of lecturing is August 4th. Sally also has over 50 published educational webinars transmitted nationally into 32 countries internationally with an average registration of 1,000 attendees a show. She has written 7 published books on dental practice management and is widely published in every major dental publication nationally and internationally. Last but certainly not least, Sally's company, McKenzie Management, has won the Townie Choice Award twice. Sally, my gosh, I tried to get you on earlier, then we had the pandemic thing. And then when I was lecturing in Ohio, I wanted to swing by your house and do the podcast there. And you said, yeah, you're not that dumb. And so you said we had to be on Zoom at least 1,000 miles apart and sober while this took place. So I got gypped out of that one. But my gosh, Sally, in your wildest dreams, I'm talking about the dreams of me. In your wildest dreams, did you ever think you would be coaching dentists through a pandemic?
No, I didn't. That thought never even entered my mind because I had been through 3 recessions with a dentist during the time. And so as a result of that, we were always, busy because dentists needed help. But a pandemic, the thought never even, entered my mind. Never.
So, what I'm trying to bring focus to 2 things on my show now. The show's 4 years old, but not really because 4 years was pre-pandemic and all that's out the window. And so it was, I remember, every Christmas I spent in Beeville with the 4 grandkids. And I remember from Christmas to New Year's, sitting there and kept seeing these emails every once in a while news articles about this pandemic thing, but we were in the middle of Christmas. America. The fall, it's Halloween, then it gets Thanksgiving, then it's the big Christmas, then so no one cared. And then as soon as January 1 started, then China had to go through their whole Chinese New Year. And it started to get freaky about February. Then finally, March 11, the World Health Organization says, Houston, we have a problem. So what I'm trying to focus on is moving forward from March 11, Houston, we had a problem. We had to close down our office on St. Patrick's Day, and then we were legally opened it back up on Cinco de Mayo. So something about, I guess, just getting drunk off Irish Jameson whiskey and margaritas was what those two decisions were based on. We're being told that the coronavirus, again, 85% of all humans live in the Eastern Hemisphere, not the West where the Americas are, and 85% live in the Northern Hemisphere, not the Southern Hemisphere. So almost everybody lives between 20 and 40 degrees in the northern deal, and what we know from corona is the corona, it dies out in the summer and comes back in the fall. And so we close down in the spring. It should be flat now. So a lot of people are thinking we're going to have to it's going to be a lot worse in the fall, and then the worst will be behind us at the end of the year, and then next year we're going to fade away. So so that's what I want to talk about with you today. What would you tell these people to be thinking, doing, planning? And then second of all, I don't care about me and you. We're a bunch of rich old people. We don't care. I'm worried about these 25-year-old little girls that just graduated from dental school with $400,000 in debt. The DSOs, I mean, if your practice slows down 25%, you're letting go all the associates to do you don't have enough room for 2 workers. So I want you to talk. I want you the opening question. Let's say that little girl's name is Sally McKenzie, but she's a millennial, so we'll call her Sally McSpiracy, and because they seem to have a lot more conspiracy theories, so we'll just call her Sally McSpiracy. She graduated. She just graduated a month ago. She's got $400,000 in student loans. She thought she was just going to walk up to any DSO, Heartland, Pacific, Aspen, and get a job, or go back home to her dentist who said he'd hire her, but now he's not busy enough. So my opening question is, what would you tell little Miss Sally McMuffin, who just walked out of dental school with $400,000 in student loans, to all this stuff going on?
Well, and one thing that I pride myself on, and I have very strong survival skills. And so I would try to impart what that means to Sally, to what it means to survive, and that you have to get a grip on your shorts. You might take time out for 5 minutes for crying in your soup for the day, but after that you've got to get a grip on your shorts and you got to get on with it. So I think what I would do is I would contact any possible connection in dentistry with my fantastic resume that I have, and I would put it out there. I still think that there's dentists out there that are hiring dentists, but there's other professions that also may be hiring dentists as well. But definitely, she's got to decrease her overhead. She's got student loans, okay, but everything else in her personal life, she's got to, just like the dentists have to do, they have to get out of debt as much as possible, reduce their everyday, spending, and once you are forced to survive in that type of environment, you begin to understand. You begin to understand, of course, that you can live without ABC, and you can live without going to XYZ, and but you have to reduce the overhead because you've got debt and you have to make income. I would exhaust all my possibilities in dentistry, and that might take several months to do. And then, I would think I would probably start exploring outside of dentistry as well, because the bottom line is that you have to survive. So, and you just can't let it, you cannot let it get it down. If you allow it to get you down, whether it's an existing dentist or sadly right out of dental school, once you're down, it's very hard to get yourself, back up again. And you just have to fight. You have to fight as much as you can and quit whining and moaning and crying and feeling sorry for yourself and get on with it.
Okay, are you talking about me or are you talking about this person who just graduated? I don't know if this is like getting personal or, but since 1933, the United States has entered into a recession a total of 13 times, and the average one is 15 months. I graduated in 1980. I was actually not born in 1933. I know you can't tell by seeing me on YouTube, but to me, 1980 was the absolute worst. I mean, the interest rates hit 21%. We had double-digit inflation, unemployment. Paul Volcker, who was the Federal Reserve Chairman, who came from the New York Fed, he had to be surrounded by bodyguards. I knew three people in my school whose dad lost the family farm and walked into the barn and blew their head off. It was just the worst. And then I graduated in 87. That was Black Monday. The market dropped a quarter, and I thought that was scary. Then 2000, we had the Y2K. Then 10 years ago, we had Lehman's brother. And a lot of people are thinking that this upcoming, this recession that we're in, I mean, we've already lost more jobs than the Great Depression. We've lost 40 million U.S. jobs. The economy contracted, double digits around the world. A lot of people are thinking that we are headed for an economic shit show. Do you believe that or do you not believe that? Do you think we're going to do that V-shaped recovery and it's all going to be hunky-dory? Or do you believe that worse times are ahead of us for the next couple of years?
I think it'll be a V-shaped thing. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion of when it will go back up, but I think we just have to look at history. This is not the first pandemic we've been through. We've been through a depression. We've been through recessions. So I think there's too much strength in America for it to not go back up. But when, I can't say when. So when it does start to go back up, if you've got yourself positioned where you have built strong communication and loyalty with your patients and you provide good services and you've always been there for the people that you serve, it will come back to you. I believe.
So we'll move on from this new grad, which what Sally said. It's so obvious. They've been telling you this for 1,000 years. It's not what you earn. It's not what you make. It's what you spend. I'll never forget it when I got here in '87. One of the senators, McCain, was involved in some scandal with this Keating guy, this banker. And he was going bankrupt, and he claimed he didn't have any money. And everybody's like, dude, you got to have money. Oh, no, he had an island, he had yachts, he had airplanes. I think he had 3 airplanes, a helicopter. And when it was all done and said, this really old man who's like 70 he was upside down. And it's like, it was like, you mean you built the Phoenician, and after the Phoenician, you still don't have $1 in your savings account? I mean, people are batshit crazy. So what do they do wrong? I mean, I got 2 dental schools here. They come out of dental school, $400,000 in debt, and I say, look, I know your dad. He'd love it if you move back home and live with him for free. And he can't hire you. He's not busy enough, but you could live there for free. You could get a couple of different jobs, and you could start, with zero spending, start saving, paying down debt, the whole 9 yards. Then I'll run into the kid a year ago, and guess what I hear? Oh, I found a beautiful girl at the bar, married her, and bought a $400,000 house. So now he's got $400,000 student loans, a $400,000 home. And guess what? The girl that married him, guess what? She doesn't want to work. Can you believe that? And she wants to have 114 kids and live in a shoe. And then you see the guy another year later, and he looks like he's aged like 49 years. And I'm just like, dude, live at home. Don't get married. And I mean, the only reason I can see to get married is if you have a kid on the way. I mean, if you don't have a kid on the way, it's a girlfriend. It's not a wife thing unless, you made a baby sapien. And you just say, and all you do is say, live below your means, live below your means, live below your means. And then every dentist I meet, I take the 16 sectors of the economy and I said, okay, housing. Are you right in the middle? Are you a 3-bedroom, two? Oh no, they got way too much house. Okay, car. You just have like a 5-year-old Honda. Oh no, I got a Beamer. Okay, your wedding ring, is it one of those little nugget things that looks like you bought it in a candy machine, or is it a big rock? Oh, it's a huge rock. It's 3 carat. And I was like, on vacation, did you go to the lake for free and just charcoal hamburgers? Oh no, we went to Hawaii. We took a cruise, and I go through all 16 deals, and it's like nothing is even in the middle. 16 out of 16 categories, they live way beyond their means. And I saw this the most brutal in the Lehman's Day meltdown. I mean, I think it was 87 dental practices went under in Phoenix, Arizona. And what did they all have in common? They had $1 million Taj Mahal mortgage, and they were, just debt out of their wazoo, and they couldn't handle their debt payment. They couldn't even handle the interest on their debt. Why do dentists, lawyers, and physicians spend more than they earn?
Because they, there's a lot of different things. Number one, I think that you have to look at their parents and how they were raised. They're obviously entitled. They feel entitled to have this. They have low self-esteem. And therefore, the more stuff that they have, it builds up their self-esteem and their self-worth. Unfortunately, and that's not all of them, but that's what happens with a lot of them. And that's why I have a clinical psychologist on my team. I have had for years. So it doesn't make sense to me either. It's fear-based. It's definitely fear-based, but it's a lot of entitlement. And that may not be so much the dentist owner. It can be the wife that's got an iron skillet over his head, for example, that is doing it too as well. But there's a sense of pride, and they really do care about what other people think if they're driving a Beamer or a 10-year-old Honda. They just do. So it's sad. It really is sad.
So, are you insinuating? Would you say that on average, dentists are buying a big house and a Rolex watch and a Beamer because it's compensating for low self-esteem?
I think that a lot of it, I think it's entitlement. They feel entitled to have these things. It builds up their self-worth so they can keep up, with the Joneses, so to speak. But what other reason would there be that, it's one thing if you're a billionaire and, a Rolex watch is like $5 in to the amount of money that you have. But to spend more than what you have, in my opinion, is a psychological problem. Yes.
Wow, that is very good. I'm trying to look that psychologist you've had. I saw her on your her website is McKenzie MGMT. So McKenzie MC. So she's an Irish Mick. You know it all the time. Irish Mick McKenzie. MGMT, but I saw that. Where do I go under?
Her name is Nancy Haller. She's worked for years for the Center for Creative Leadership in San Diego, and that's where I first met her. But prior to Nancy, I also had another one in La Jolla, California. So I basically had 3 over the years where because when we go into a practice, we can, if we identify that there's poor leadership skills, it's one thing to train somebody about leadership, but again, if there's a self-esteem issue, then it's going to take more coaching than that. It's not about the numbers then anymore, because the person just can't execute what it is that you're advising them, to do. Many of them don't.
Oh, so was that Nancy Haller? Was that the psychologist?
Yes.
That's her. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what if someone said, has Nancy exclusively with dentists or not really?
No, she's not exclusively with dentists. She's
an organizational psychologist that provides training for leadership effectiveness, interpersonal communication, conflict management, team building. These are all. If I ask, I've been surveying dentists for since we launched Dental Town in 1999, because we have that survey. So you can go on to Dental Town, and if you start a thread, you can start a poll. And you can say, what stresses you out the most in dentistry? And you would expect that, since half of the dentists won't do a molar root canal, but you'll get paid $1,000 by someone else, an insurance company or something, you would think that would be their number one stress, but it never is. It's always people. It's always their staff or their patients. In fact, my first email this morning from Today's Dental was about a patient. You know what I mean? It's always a patient or staff. What would you and Nancy, after looking at this for 30 years, why would you say that's the most stressful thing for these dentists?
Why is it the most stressful?
Yeah.
Dealing with people?
Yeah.
Oh, it just is.
Is there something in their personality that makes it harder to deal with people?
Well, I'm not a psychologist, even though I've had therapy myself, and I think that it takes one to go through therapy to understand a person who probably needs it. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic parent, for example, and there are characteristics that the child learns what they're going to learn about trust. For example, between 0 and 6 years of age. So these are generally people that have did not have good childhoods. Just because they're your parents doesn't mean they were good people, for example. And so a lot of this goes back to that. And but it comes, if you don't break the chain of how you process information and what it is that you value and you trust and your self-worth, then you just transfer it off to your children and you continue to execute it in different ways throughout your business as well. And then I've done a tremendous amount of the Myers-Briggs personality testing over all these years. And I've even written a book about it. So I can look at a dentist temperament type and know usually what type of leadership and problem areas they're going to have with patients and staff before we ever even meet them. It helps us as a consultant to know what recommendations to make. So there are some temperament types out there that, for example, that feel that they have communicated with a patient or communicated with the employee. And when the employee and the patient doesn't do what they've asked them to do, then they're really hurt and confused and on why they didn't do it. Because the bottom line is they're not as good a communicator as they think that they are. Then you have the introverted dentists. And introverted dentists are not as good communicators as the extroverted dentists. And the introverted dentists have to force themselves to be extroverted because you have to talk all day long in a dental practice to patients, and you have to speak to the employees as well. So the personality type can have a lot to do with it. But sometimes there's some really deep-seated issues that the dentist has had, or any adult at this age can have, that clearly stems back from childhood. So.
Yeah, I agree. That is ideal. So in your consulting, what has changed pre-pandemic, 40 years of doing this to now? What would it, if I go to McDonald's, I'm going to get a Big Mac, fry, and a Coke. When someone calls up Sally or any of your advisors, and by the way, I might have said something wrong. I said that her website is McKenzieManagement.com. McKenzie, MGMT.com. But you also got the dentistnetwork.net. If my homies had to go to one of those two websites, which one you got? And then you also have practice management learning. You also have, of those three websites, McKenzieManagement.com, the dentistnetwork.net, and practicemanagementlearning.com. Which one would you recommend they go to, and why?
Well, the McKenzieMGMT.com website is the parent website to be able to get to any of our training or consulting or Dr. Haller or so on and so forth. The practicemanagementlearning.com is simply just my 60 free webinars. That's a webinar site.
Practicemanagementlearning.com is right. 60 free websites, or 60 free webinars.
Mm-hmm. And the dentistnetwork.net is that is a site that I built in order to give people dentistry advisors that I knew and I trusted in the industry. That's how it started. And so they can go there and go onto the library, and they can get any kind of information, employee management, transition stuff, technology information. So the dentistnetwork.net is almost like a separate type of business from McKenzie Management.
So the mothership is McKenzie Management, McKenzieMGMT.com. The Dentist Network is kind of like, what was that, Angie's List? Is that kind of Sally's List, kind of the Angie's List of dentistry? You got recommended by the Sal. Is that kind of, is that the Angie's List site in dentistry?
I don't know. I had never thought of it that way, but I guess that maybe that it could be, yes.
It could be. And then the 60 webinars on practicemanagementlearning.com. You ought to talk to Howard. If you got 60, you ought to put one of those on Dentaltown. You've put some on the past. I remember when you put one on in 2004, it had 10,000 views. I mean, they love you there. I had to send you an email to Howard Goldstein. You might want to pick one of those, because then it'd be free marketing, and then you could say, by the way, if you want to hear 59 more of these, go to practicemanagementlearning.com. Sally, a completely separate issue that I'm getting more of and more of and more of every day is older guys like me. I'll be 58 in August. A lot of them are coming to the realization that, if they didn't get divorced, you can retire at 60, 65. You get divorced once, you're going to push out that retirement, and you get divorced twice, you'll probably die at the chair. But a lot of them are thinking, well, I never got divorced, my kids are gone, and I don't really know if I'm up for this anymore. But here's the indicator that I know will blow your mind. But, Dentaltown's had free classified ads since 1999. There's always about 5,000 free classified ads in different categories. But it's always been about 4 ads looking for an associate and 1 ad selling the practice. You go on there today, right now, 2,000 ads selling my practice and 1,000 ads, I want to hire an associate. So if I called you up, knowing that you've worked with a clinical psychologist, you got to know people. I don't know anybody that's really crushing it in business that doesn't know people, psychology, anthropology, sociology. If you don't get people, you're not going to do very well on earth. I mean, if you say, well, I'm an expert in zebras and giraffes, okay, that's really not going to apply. But if a 58-year-old dentist, hypothetically me, or a 60-year-old called you up and said, So I don't think I'm up for this. I think it's on the list of my practice to sell it. Would you sense, okay, you're scared, you're low self-esteem, you're frightened, I know this sucks, but the worst will be over by Christmas. Hang in there one more year? Or do you say, man, that's what I'd do?
Well, what I would do is not. I don't have any enough information, uh, nor the right to tell this dentist what he or she should do. It would be irresponsible of me as a consultant, and so therefore, I want to do more due diligence. I want to ask this dentist. Why they are feeling that way. How long have they been in practice? Tell me about the makeup of the practice. Are you the only dentist? How many employees do you have? How's your overhead? And I can look at those things, or ask him about overhead, for example. But I'd like to really know. I have it's called a opportunity potential revenue assessment. So I would encourage this dentist. It's free. They just have to get me the information, and they send it to me, the numbers. And what I'm doing is I'm looking in the most common areas that my experience has given me of where there could be potential revenue for this dentist. So, in other words, but in the due diligence process, the dentist may not tell me it doesn't have anything to do with money. I have to find out where this dentist's head is at and why they feel that would be a good thing. I want to find out, does this dentist have retirement? You can't file for Social Security yet. He may just be having a bad day, and I've just got to talk him off the cliff here for a minute. But you got to do due diligence first. So you can't it might be the right thing for me to eventually, after being armed with the information, to recommend that yes, he does retire and sell. On the other hand, it may not be the right time, and it may not be my recommendation. So I can't give you a black and white answer, because every situation needs to be heartfelt, to figure out why is this dentist feeling that this is the best for him or her right now.
Well put. Sally, one of the things that you made a lasting impact on me, and some days I love you for it, and other days I'm mad at you because you're an overhead queen, and you train my staff, and now they're so tight that when they walk, their butt squeaks, and it's just trying to get them to spend a dime. You created that overhead thing. You were the one who beat in their minds. Cash is king. You're the one who said, okay, I got 4 dentists, and they each make $25,000 a month. One has 80% overhead, so he has to do $125,000 to net 25. The other one has the American Dental Association average of 65% overhead, so that he has to do $71,000 to make 25. But if you had 50% overhead, you only got to do $50,000 to make 25 grand. So would you rather do $50,000? And I always do this clinical stuff. And what procedure do I not like the most? I love. When I was out of school, I loved a central incisor root canal, because those were the easiest. Then you grew into molars. Now everything's so boring. I only want to do a molar retreat. I don't want to pull a gum disease tooth. I want an impacted wisdom tooth. But what I don't really like, there's no challenge, just a lot of work, is when you walk in that op and it's the upper right quadrant of MOD composites, on little Billy, and you got to do an MOD composite on 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's an hour. It's just work. It's not a challenge. It's just a pain in the ass. So I'm trying to think of this stuff. Okay, would I rather do $125,000 of MOD composites to make 25 grand, or would I rather do $50,000 of composites to make 25 grand? Why do dentists have such an overhead problem? You talked earlier, they have an overhead problem at home. They overspend on house, cars, wives, vacations, diamonds, clothes, restaurants. But why in the dental office? Why is overhead such a problem in the dental office?
Well, payroll is the largest expenditure, and what I what I have found in analyzing these practices, over the years, the dentists didn't have a way, and they were not educated. They never thought about it. Of how many hygienists do I really need? How many front office people do I really need? How many dental assistants do I really need? So it was my mission early in my career to try to analytically figure this out, so I could advise the dentists. Dentists are notorious. I always talk about the one dentist, three employees, and I always called it the hot dog apple pie USA dental office. And invariably, the next employee that dentist would hire, so the dentist has one front office, one assistant, one hygienist. The next one they would hire is another dental assistant. And I think that it's because they're in the clinical area. They know the clinical area, but almost always that money for that salary needs to probably go in the business aspect of the practice, to have somebody who is up there, making patient contact, unscheduled treatment plans, people have missed appointments, past due recall. That gets business back into the practice. That brings money into the practice. Having another dental assistant turning around a treatment room does not do that. Right now, they're just crazy right now. And I get it. I understand that, how we have to spend 15 minutes in between each patient, disinfecting the room, and how much time that it's taking for them to adhere to their perception or what they have heard of the infection control procedures right now. And so what you have is a lack of consistency with these dentists, because a dentist and the dentist team will interpret what they have heard or read in a lot of different ways. And therefore, you're going to have some that are going to go to the nth degree and beyond the degree to execute the infection control, while you'll have others that won't. Going back to payroll, most dentists pay hygienists a guaranteed salary, whether they have a patient or they don't. So then we have a patient retention system that has a lot of weaknesses in it. High cancellation and failure of appointment rate, but yet the hygienist still gets paid. So when that hygienist is paid for that hour, when there is no money being produced, that takes monies away from an assistant or the front office, area. So that really, ends up being a problem. And then if you have a front office person, then they start, they don't whine, but they're kind of whining that they can't get everything done. And right now they are overloaded with more things to do than what they were before this pandemic. And so you have a main person who's been at that front desk, and now she needs help. And so the dentist brings on a helper. So now you have two people in scheduling, two people in insurance, two people in the recall system, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and the right hand spends unnecessary time telling the left hand what the right hand did, so the left hand doesn't repeat it. And so therefore you have increased payroll, you have unclear defined job descriptions, and the and a duplication of efforts within the system that causes weaknesses and poor customer service. So the practice is not producing as much as it could be because of that. So payroll, it's not usually in dental supplies. It's not, it's because payroll can be controlled for sure.
It's music to my ears because I've known you for 30 years. Me and everybody in our team have seen you lecture so many times. I remember one time you were lecturing in Tucson, and I almost thought I could get up there and give the lecture. I'd seen you that many times. I said, I know what's coming next. And I was right. But a lot of, but you're right. It's a dentist framework. I mean, everything's relative to your personal framework. So obviously a dentist, when he wants to get the fourth employee, is going to be another assistant. And I've always noticed whenever I walk into an office, how you pick your sample size is more important than than the size of your sample. Like I remember when we had charts. I remember you came to my office one time and I had 5,000 charts, and you took a ruler. I don't know if you remember this. You pulled the first chart, you took a ruler, you pulled that chart at the end of the ruler, and you rulered all the way through because you said when you guys go to purchase chart, you start at A, and then by the time you get to C, you're done with the project, and then another year later, you're like, we need to purge a chart, so you'll start at A again, and you said, A through C has been purged 8 times, and no one's ever seen Z, but we went through the whole charts, we pulled it up, and that was your statistical sampling. Say, okay, you got 5,000 charts, we opened up, let's say 150, whatever, and that's what we based off. A lot of dentists right now, when I walk into the dental office, my survey is, where's the dentist when I walk in there? Like when my buddy says, hey, swing by, after work or whatever. Every time I've ever walked into a dental office, 90% of the time, Doc is sitting back in his private office on the computer. And he has, a hygienist doing a cleaning or a no-show. She's sitting in the break room. And then I'll say, what are you doing? And I'll say, well, my assistant's packing cord. I'm like, dude, we've been talking for 15 minutes. It takes me 1 minute to pack a cord. And I see these two dentists, like I can go in the office and for a crown, and I can go in there, shake their hand, set them, lean them back, numb them up with Septicane, set a timer for 4 minutes, and then while that's timer for fill out the lab, take a shade, whatever the hell. When the timer goes ding, I pack the 01, I take a 57, take out the interproximal, do the whole crown. And then when I'm done with my prep, that's when I check my prep. I'll make a temporary. Because when you make a temporary, if you have to drill, if you have to adjust through the occlusion, you don't have enough reduction, so now you'll never have reduction coping. Anyway, long story short, when I get the temporary perfectly made, and with an assistant that takes like 3 minutes to make a temporary, then you take the impression, and then you see the temporary, and you're done in half an hour. Yet every dentist I know schedules an hour and a half for a crown, and when it's time for that cord packing, he disappears for 15 minutes. And so I totally get that. And what you're saying is, okay, Dennis, you're just being lazy, man. You just want to go play on the internet for 15 minutes every hour. And it should have been a front person. You called her a business admin. I always don't know what to call the front desk. I mean, I don't want to call her a front desk. I don't want to say, oh, your career was named after a piece of furniture. We have a dentist, a hygienist, but you're named after a piece of furniture, and this is your new helper. Her name is Front Door, and this girl's name is Back Door, and this girl's name. What is the the best term for someone who works up front? Front desk, business manager, receptionist.
If you have one person, that title would be a business coordinator. As the practice increases, and now you hire a second person, the business coordinator term is dropped. And the two people then, their jobs are divided between the financial coordinator, handles all the money, and scheduling coordinator handles all the scheduling. And first in command.
So the first one's a business coordinator.
Then it depends on how many people that you have up there. If you have 2 people, then it's financial coordinator, scheduling coordinator. Usually then if there is a third person hired, that third person probably would either be a patient coordinator or a treatment coordinator. The fourth person would either be a patient coordinator or a treatment coordinator. And then, of course, the question of the day is when when does the practice need to have, I personally don't like the term office manager. See, so I just don't like that term. If that type of job description needs to be in a practice, I would prefer to call them a business administrator. They're a business administrator of the practice. But dentists all the time, see, I do, we do virtual and on-site office manager training. We call it office manager training because that's just a term everybody knows. But a dentist will call and say, oh yeah, I want to get my office manager trained, or I'm going to hire an office manager. Well, when they say they're going to hire an office manager, the first thing you say is, can you help me to understand why you think you need an office manager, and what would this person be doing? If they have an office manager, I ask them the same thing. What is this person doing right now? Is this person hiring and firing? For example, and generally they say no. What they tell me is she's answering phone and making appointments. She's a business coordinator. She's the only person at the front desk, and they want to call an office manager. And then that becomes a problem as the practice continues to grow. But those are the names that we use.
Okay, so if you're that you call it the hot dog apple pie dental office, one dentist with 3 employees would be one hygienist, one business coordinator, one assistant.
Yes.
And the 4th new hire should not be a second dental assistant, but someone up front. And the next person up front, I'm sorry, I'm not very fast typing on taking notes with you. One business coordinator, the other 3 terms you said was financial coordinator, patient coordinator, treatment coordinator. So the first one is a business coordinator, and if you hired an additional one, they would be called the second would be called what?
All right, so the first one is a business coordinator, and now you've decided, well, let me just throw this in here. One person at that front desk in the business area can process, which is check in and check out, approximately 20 to 22 patients a day. Now, if you have one person and there are 22 patients between a dentist and a hygienist during the day being processed, and this front office person is saying, I can't get all this done, then I feel very confident of my experience that there's inefficiencies within the systems that this one person is doing, because we know that it can be done. So as the practice starts to grow, and now let's say the practice is processing, they've got 25 to 30 patients a day that they have to process. That business coordinator gives up that title, and she gives up half of her tasks, her duties in her job description. And what is the most democratic process is to basically ask her which she wants to do. Does she want to do the money part with the patients, accounts receivable, billing, checking the patients out, asking for money, over-the-counter collection ratio? Or does she want to be first in command of the telephone, and does she want to schedule, do all the scheduling for the recall system? And so that one business coordinator's job description now is split in 2, and the business coordinator title goes away.
Okay, but the second, it's going to be a financial coordinator, or did you say scheduling coordinator or patient coordinator? What do you call that person?
Those 2 people would be a financial coordinator or a scheduling coordinator.
Okay, and then the third one, and that the second one comes on at 25 or more patients a day, or did you say 20 to 25?
One person can check in and check out 20 to 22 patients a day.
Damn, I mean you're sticking with 22. I thought, I mean, God, you're serious about 22 as opposed to 22 to 25. Okay, so the first one does 20 to 22.
It's not chiseled in granite. The formula is that it takes 10 minutes to check in a patient and check a patient out. And I don't care that this is with the new technology, this may not be the case right now with pandemic. Let me just say that. But 10 minutes. So one front office person, let's say they work 8 hours a day. That's 480 minutes a day. They need a half a day to process patients. 240 minutes divided by 10 is a maximum of 24. But we know from our consulting with practices and analyzing what's happening, that one front office person will start to feel some pressure at about 20 to 23 patients a day. So it's not chiseled in granite, but it's around in there. But if we go into a practice and they're processing 18 patients a day and they've got 2 people at the front desk, I guarantee you that their payroll overhead percentage will be more than 19 to 22% of revenue.
So the second one comes on at 20 to 22 patients a day, and they can do up to, I take it, 40 to 44 a day?
That's correct, because then once you get...
Ah, man, I took addition in grammar school.
Well, once you get 2 people, then that 10 minutes to process a patient is knocked down to 5 minutes per job description. 5 minutes because, well, first of all, the financial coordinator doesn't check people in, and she doesn't answer the phone. The scheduling coordinator does that, and the financial coordinator checks the patients out. So then the mathematical formula is 5 minutes per patient. So again, if we go back to an 8-hour day, half of that's 240 minutes. If you divide that by 5 minutes, I think that's about 45 or 46 patients maximum per day those 2 people could process. And of course, the other thing is it depends on how many producers that you have. I mean, if you're going to have 2 dentists and 3 hygienists, you're going to be processing, if you figure each dentist sees 10 patients, there's 20 right there. And if the hygienist see 8, 1 an hour, there's 24. So there's 44 patients with 2 dentists and 3 hygienists. With that many producers, the practice might and probably would need to consider a treatment coordinator position so they have consistency of the sales process in presenting treatment plans. This is a big problem area in practice. If they have associate dentists, they have each associate dentist presenting treatment plans, and therefore you've got 3 different salespeople. And if you have 3 hygienists, then you have 3 more. You have 6 salespeople trying to sell what it is you're trying to sell to the patients. So you want to have consistency of the sales process. So you have one person who's trained presents all treatment plans, and they have to have an 85% or higher closure rate. So,
gosh, you're just such a genius. I'm so glad I got you to come on the show. And I swear to God, that check is in the mail. I'm sorry. I know it's supposed to be here before you logged on, but it's in the mail, Sally. I swear it's in the mail.
Thank you.
One of the things that, after you've done this 30, 40 years and you're at this end of the deal, a lot of dentists tell me, I hear this all the time, when I started out, I was this apple pie practice. I had 4 operatories. I had 1 girl up front, 1 hygienist, 1 assistant, and I used to do about 50 a month and take home 25. But I knew I had to grow, and I knew I had to do all this, and I've never netted 25 ever since. And I got big, and I had associates and overhead and paying multiple hygienists where, they're sitting back in the break room. And so, and it just seems like the happiest guys are the ones that say, yeah, I do $400,000 a year on a 3-day work week and take home 200. And it's always what you're talking about, this really small, no stress, nothing. I mean, it's so stressed. These are the dentists that after they swish with Listerine, they actually spit it out. They don't even swallow it. So then the other end of that would be major DSOs. So I want to change the conversation to the major DSOs because they must know something. I mean, if you're if you're Bob Fontana and you got 800 Aspens, if you're Heartland Dental and got 1,000 Heartlands, if you're, I mean, Rick Workman, if you're Steve Fontana, I mean, so these guys know something, but you and I have had a long relationship. And when we first met, Orthodontic Centers of America had been publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange and completely imploded because every orthodontist that sold in their practice had to work with them, had to stay on the team for 3 years. And I think, they thought, well, they'll stay with us afterwards. Oh my God, at 3 years and 1 second, every one of them ran. The stock crashed. There was a dozen on NASDAQ. They're all gone. They disappeared for a decade. Now they're all back. And so my question, if and all those guys have been on my show. I've done 1,400. I've had raccoons on my show. I mean, dogs, cats, yellow dogs. Do you think they'll all tell you that, 20 years from now, McDonald's, like all the pharmacists used to have their own place, now they all work for Walgreens and the CVC. They still believe that, give us another decade or two, all the employees, all the dentists will be employees working for McDentals. Do you see that coming too, or do you not agree with that? Or do you think it'll be like two markets, half and half? What do you think the future of DSOs? Where are DSOs now, and where will they be in 20 more years?
I don't think that it'll happen in my lifetime. That's for sure. Let me just say, in my lifetime, I don't think that will be. I plan on.
Well, now we need to know, how long do you expect to live? Are you
I'll be
are you gonna
for another 50 years? Okay, so
you're gonna be alive 50 years. So you don't think it's gonna happen in 50 years?
Now I'll tell you what's stressful. Is what's stressful are these dentists that want to be a Heartland. They want to be an Aspen. And so they have one practice, and then they go to two practices, and they try to, multiply these practices. But they're still doing the dentistry, and they're driving from location to location, 1 or 2 days here. They are so flipping stressed out. It's unbelievable. The thing that with the DSOs of where the general dentist, the individual owner, still, it has to do with the patient and the patient rapport. The DSOs do a tremendous amount of external marketing. And in my opinion, the reason they do so is that they have never, ever captured the essence of patient retention and loyalty of the patient, coming back. So they still have to be getting new business and new business and new business. With the student debt, and now with this pandemic, for sure, there is going to be a market for dentists to be there, to go into that type of a situation. But no, I don't think that you and I will see this in our lifetime. I mean, it might eventually be, but it's been around. The institution of dentistry and having your own practice has been around way too long. The new dentists, with my relationship with the new dentists, we get a lot of these phone calls. And these are young dentists who are still in dental school, and their dream, their aspiration is that they want to have multiple locations. And you just laugh. Can we see how you do with just one, to start out, and instead of getting multiple ones?
Yeah, it reminds me of the back in the day, whenever some strange dentist all of a sudden wanted to have lunch with you, you're always wondering, like, well, what's up with that? Because you would be scared that you get trapped in some multi-level marketing pitch for an hour by some dentist. But I always notice, I had an interesting conversation with Rolla Christian about that when there was what was that big one out of Utah? Flaw, AP24. Do you remember AP24?
I've heard of it, yes.
Oh man, that was a big multi-level marketing toothbrush floss, AP24. But Rolla said, she goes, isn't it weird? She goes, no one wants to work the business. They just want to sign up other people. I mean,
Uh-huh.
so everybody that comes, I said, well, I just want to buy it from you, and I don't want to be a member. Oh, no, you got to be a distributor. You'll make 5%. And now you're starting to see that in dental offices. You never saw it 20 years ago. 30 years ago, they all wanted to own their own practice. And then it started drifting towards, I don't know, a lot of people just want to be an employee. And now they've all drifted like, now none of them want to do dentistry. They all want to be the next Rick Workman. They just want to own a chain of dental office. So it's kind of like the patient doing the toothache. No one wants to do that. Everybody just wants to own the business of doing it. So lot of red flags in the business model. But I'm in ground zero for DSOs, Arizona, because it's the most progressive. The governor passed a law that said if you're licensed to do something in another state, do it here. And it started because of registered nurses, not dentists. All these hospitals were going to Ireland and trying to get nurses in Ireland, and then that was easier than trying to find more nurses. And finally, Doug Ducey just said, look, if you're a registered nurse and you're licensed in any state, you can work tomorrow in Arizona. And that included accountants, dentists, whatever. So 18% of the dentists in Arizona work for a DSO. And when you look at that long tail, the other end of the tail, 5 states, is not even 1%. So Arizona is just, I mean, like I say, it's 18%. That's 1 in 5 dentists working for a DSO. What kind of grade would you give the average DSO versus the average owner-operated independent offices? I mean, what letter grade would you give each one, and what is one doing better than the other, or what should they learn from each other?
Well, I don't think that I'm qualified to give them a grade, because the DSOs do. They have contacted me over the years, initially for help. And many times most of the time, what they wanted is that they wanted me to write their training materials. Okay. And of course, I refused to do it. I'm not going to shoot myself and my own business in the foot, by doing that, imparting that information, no matter how much you're going to pay me. But so therefore, I have not consulted in a DSO practice. I was involved in 1997 with one of the first ones in the United States. I was very sought after in 97 and 98 when they were starting to form, because unbeknownst to me, I had a reputation on Wall Street of increasing revenues in a dental practice. But it was the worst experience in my life, emotionally and financially. And so that
worse than a divorce?
Absolutely worse. Those divorces were nothing compared to this.
Well, that's powerful when you say this is worse than my divorce. And by the way, kids, that's what every dentist says about when they break up with their dental partner. They go, breaking up with my dentist partner was worse than my divorce. Okay, continue.
Yeah, really, really bad. But unfortunately, even with due diligence from attorneys, they did not uncover fraudulent activity by this. And so therefore, my only exposure, I was chief operating officer of the company. And so therefore my job was to train consultants and to do the magic of what we do, is to find the weaknesses and try to build up more revenues, in the practice, which we did. However, there were people in the business who thought that they, non-dental related, who thought they knew more about dentistry than I did. And so they basically bastardized my methodologies and the practices. They were funneling money out the back, and we had dentists who who didn't have their lab bills paid and had their phone shut off, and it was just a really dark, bad time. So I don't have a measurement. I don't have not been into an existing DSO practice, uh, for, that was 1998. So what was that, like 25 years or so ago? And I have not been in one, so I don't know how they operate.
What would you say most succinctly was a problem with that DSO or DSOs from 25 years ago? I mean, we know Orthodontic Centers of America and Lazarus, that crash, there was a dozen of them on NASDAQ at the time. So what would you say Orthodontic Centers of America, the dozen on NASDAQ, the one you work with, what do they all have in common, which looking back says that's obviously why they didn't work?
What they have in common, in my opinion, is that they don't have the vast dental experience. They have business experience, and they're trying to run it like a business, forgetting about the personal relationship with the dentist and the patient, to build loyalty. And that's why I mentioned before, my opinion is that's why they do a lot of mass external marketing, is because they just haven't captured that essence of patient retention. But that's why they don't call me to ask me for my help, because they have all types of business MBAs and PhDs and blah blah blah, and they think that they know more than Sally McKenzie.
Well, do you mind sharing what was the name of that DSO that you were working with in the beginning? Do you care about giving that name?
No, I don't. I'd rather not. I mean, it imploded a year after I left. But and Howard, what I learned from that is, and I've said this to dentists now with this pandemic, there's a gift in every tragedy. And you may not know what that gift is at the moment, but it will come to you. And so the gift that I had was, if I could start my business again from ground zero revenues, having done it 19 years previously, how would I do it different? And that was the gift I had. And that was when I went to California.
Nice. I mean, everybody says it this differently. I mean, my dad always says, well, it's not a mistake if you learn something and you're not going to do it again. I mean, that's what he'd always say. And I remember one time he was talking to a friend of mine. He goes, dude, if you're 28 years old, this guy had completely crashed, everything had gone wrong. But he, my dad said, well, dude, if you figured out alcoholism at 27 and you never drink again, this is the luckiest day of your life. He goes, I got friends that are 65, 75, 80 years old that still haven't figured it out. You know what I mean?
This is why I would like for the dentists, this was devastating, being their businesses having to close, absolutely devastating. And some will lose their practices, unfortunately. But to look at this was a gift, in that it gave you the opportunity to step back, to say, how can I change what I've been, doing? How can I reduce my overhead? How can I change my operating systems? The opportunity to start again, even though it was a short time, but be able to start again with a new business plan, a new game plan of how I can do it different. So that's what I wish that they would take from this terrible, terrible situation.
So basically the 19, I agree with the DSOs. I mean, I look at some of the greatest companies. Well, I'll just give you several examples of, Henry Ford. Okay, now we know obviously him and Walt Disney weren't perfect people. I think people have seen my podcast so many times, they just assume everyone's perfect like me. And it just really, really shocks them when they find out some of these legends or were not perfect. But Henry Ford, everything was right there, and they made everything right there, and it was just a legend. The same things I had with Mr. Honda, and same thing happened. All those great companies. It was like one ranch, and they didn't outsource anything. Look at Boeing, classic example. Boeing makes their planes in Seattle. They make their fuselage where I was born in Wichita, Kansas. The management's in frickin' Chicago. And then they're outsourcing parts to China and this and that, and then they have 3 planes fall out of the sky, and then the CEO, he's not an engineer, he should be an aeronautical engineer. And then you read stories of Mr. Honda. Look at talk about employees. Every time Mr. Honda went into a recession, all the Americans lay off their employees. So I worked for you. I worked for Ford, Chrysler. I gave you my all for 10 years, but it wasn't convenient now, so you just fire me. So now I lose my house, lose my savings, lose my self-esteem, lose everything. You know what Mr. Honda did when he had to shut down the plant? He'd call all of his employees, and he'd give them a lunch pail. And the lunch pail had a screwdriver and a hammer and all the things like in a clipboard. And he broke up all of Tokyo to sections, one section for each employee with the address of where they had sold a Honda. And they said, okay, for the next, it's going to take you 6 weeks. I want you to go to every house. Say, Sally, we sold you a Honda 5 years ago. How is it? Do you like it? Do you have any problems? And Sally says, well, the windshield wiper doesn't work. So he'd go out there and he'd fix the windshield wiper, and then he'd write up a report, and then they'd be sending in the reports every night. And then Mr. Honda's like, well, why did this windshield wiper break down? And they're all sitting in one building. And then, by the way, Sally, is there any chance you'd like a new Honda? And then when they got enough new orders, they would come back, start the factory for the new orders, but all your employees, no one lost their job. They all went back to their customer. They all knew we need to fix that windshield wiper and the left turn signal and this and that. And it was like a family by the founder. And then there's other people that say, well, you got to focus on one thing. You can't do 2 things. Okay, then tell Mr. Yamaha to go close down his motorcycle factory or his piano factory. The guy liked pianos and motorcycles, and he's number 1 in both in Japan. And what you're saying is that if you screw up the human relationship side of it, and you don't make a relationship with your long-term staff, you're not going to have long-term employees. So then you're going to be the DSOs. I personally think the American market is 2 markets because of the guy you introduced me to, New Patients New Patients Inc. You were the one that introduced me to Howie Horitz, who you told me was the better Howie in dentistry, and that I should change my name to Ralph, not to ruin Howie's reputation. But Howie he went to, and Howie and Mark, they went to, I think it was UCLA. Anyway, they issued a study from a university, and the university basically said there's 2 Americas in dentistry. One just wants to, and it was half and half. One just wants the cheapest, wants to buy on price, they'll go over where their insurance wants. And the other half is going to pay extra because they don't want the lowest cost. They want to go to their particular dentist. And that was the main driver. They wanted to go to my guy, right? And that was half and half. Do you still think that's the 2 Americas we're living in 2020, where half of them, if they got the free filling at a Medicaid DSO clinic, that's where they'd go, and the other half would say, I don't really want to go there. I'd pay a little more out of pocket. And the reason I'm asking is because in the middle of this pandemic, a lot of people, when your life's turned upside down, you start analyzing everything. And one of the biggest questions on Dental Town is, gosh, I think this would be a good time to just drop all dental insurance and go fee-for-service cash. And instead of seeing 100 people that all have insurance, just see 10 people that pay in cash. So I try to make my questions so complex and long enough that something good in there. So there's something in there that's good enough for you to bite on an answer.
You do it so I'll forget. I'll forget it. But when you were talking about on the Dental Town, message board, the thing that just fries me is the discussion or the dentists that are charging the patients extra money for PPE. I just, they tried to do that when OSHA got in their life, and what was that, maybe 1985, and it doesn't work. It's just a cost of doing business. It's like the dentist feels they're entitled. I'm being punished, so now the patient's going to be punished, and I'm going to sock you with extra money. It's like, can you just absorb it in someplace else? So I wanted to just say that from a marketing point of view and building a relationship with the patients, don't punish the patient. Don't let the patient think that you're punishing the patient. Okay, now what were the other points?
You know where I think that comes from? I think that comes from is when you go to the red light district, they do charge you for that little.
Well, I can't say that I've ever been.
The little disease protection device costs an extra $1. I mean, I don't know. I've just heard.
I do agree that there are patients who will go, that will always go, for cheap, because they just basically don't have the money. People have lost their jobs and so on and so forth, and it's really critical. But there are people out there who don't live from paycheck to paycheck, and they have money and they value their dental health. They've already invested a lot into their dental health, and they're not going to let it, go down the hill. They're going to, continue to spend the money. But for dentists, I know how dentists feel. I know they're aggravated, with the insurance and the insurance patients and so on and so forth. But don't shoot yourself in the foot. You can't make any drastic business decision like that without having information. How many active patients do you have on what insurance plans, and how much money is that bringing into the practice? Unless you've reduced your overhead down to ground zero, and you can get by with making a lot less money, because that's what's going to happen.
I can't believe this, but when you came to my office for the first time, you recommended SoftDent, and I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. We were on that for like 30 years. When we finally switched, because it just kept crashing all the time, and having Dental Town, I have 5 programmers, and every time they come over and see me at Today's Dental, they go, "God, why are you on this archaic?" But anyway, so we switched to Open Dental. But I know my homies. You're a practice manager guru for 40 years. If she was going to open up her own office today, 2020, what software would you recommend that she go with? Practice management software. EagleSoft, Dentrix, Open Dental, SoftDent that you put me on. By the way, do I get a refund for that advice? I mean, it did last 30 years, but I did have to change it after 30 years. So do I get my money back?
No.
I mean, my patients want their money back after their filling that lasted 50 years.
That was a long, long time ago. SoftDent was a much better from a practice management point of view than the other systems at that time. But then they were bought and sold, bought and sold, bought and sold. And you had to take that into consideration. The one software that has certainly been consistent and is Dentrix. So there's no doubt that the majority of the practices that we go in, that we consult with, will have Dentrix. So you have to assume that Dentrix has more users, okay? But then if you want an on the cloud, system, then Open Dental might be one that you would go with, or Curve, for something that's, of course, Dentrix has theirs too as well. I think that I would probably be more inclined to, if I were opening up a practice, to want to have something that was on the cloud. But I do think that they're not all created equal by any sense of the word. There's training. How do they get training? The reports, the employees don't know how to get a lot of the information, the reports out of the system. So there are some that are more user friendly than the other. Then, you have to look at cost. I mean, that's why the online subscription is a much more attractive. to a new dentist starting out in practice because they don't have to shell out a lot of money. I don't think that I would want to have all the equipment in my office with the server and so on and so forth. I think I would want to be able to access the information from home. So I think that I would investigate the online systems probably first.
Okay, now, kids, I'm going to ask her some questions now, and these are going to be challenging for Sally, and we call that channel conflict. So, I say, do you recommend this business? And we both know that we've all had dinner with this guy or gal, and we're all buddies. So it's difficult. And I mean, Sally knows everybody. So some people are thinking, well, you know what? I don't want to get that second assistant. I see these outsourced third parties for dental billing and insurance and all that, and I'm just going to do that. Are you a big fan of outsourcing in general?
I am a big fan of outsourcing. I do outsourcing myself, with my design, my IT department. So yes, I'm a big fan of outsourcing. I think that in order to outsource, you have to look at again the money. In other words, if it's insurance, for example, how many insurance claims am I processing? The advantage to outsourcing is the knowledge and the brains behind that versus my trying to advertise on Craigslist to find an employee who already has that knowledge and that experience. And then you say, okay, well, I can't find anybody, so I'll hire somebody that worked at a medical practice. Then who the heck is going to train that person? So sometimes I am a fan of outsourcing. Yes.
And I know we've had dinner back in the day with Care Credit as a financial. Are you still a big supporter of Care Credit? Is that the best one, or is that kind of like when you're talking about overhead? I mean, I'd rather you get an A in labor and an F in lab and supplies and electricity. I mean, this dentist the other day was telling me he wanted to go to solar, and I'm like, solar? Your electric bill? How does your electric bill make the first 100 thoughts of your dental office? I mean, when I go into a dental office and they locked up the thermostat, I think you should just call 911 and say, we need a psych pickup. I mean, I don't care about the electric bill. I don't care about supplies. I care about labor. But Care Credit, is patient financing a really big deal, or is that kind of like that's not even in one of the top 10 issues?
No, it is a big deal. And yes, Care Credit is one of my affiliate partners, and I have recommended them from the beginning. I'm probably one of the longest running affiliate partners that they've had. They've been in business for a long time, so they have a lot of statistics. They do a lot of research. They have kept up with the times regarding as far as patients and the dentist as well, with online tools that they have, and have done a great job with training the people in the office to know how to promote it. So, yeah, I highly recommend Care Credit.
Another big question they're asking, this is tough, because you and I have both been divorced. They come out of school and they say to me, they go, I don't want to go to a small town where they need me because I'm single, and it's probably easier to meet a mate in Phoenix with 3.8 million metro than it is if I go to Eloy, and plus I might be the only person who can read down there. We both are friends with Scott McDonald, who does demographics. What do you say to someone? I'm $400,000 broke. I'm in the middle of the pandemic. Obviously, if you go to Pew, I mean, that's the best demographics. I mean, you got this big nonprofit agency that's been out for a gazillion years. They're mostly concerned about the ocean, which is 70% of the earth, but they are interested in healthcare, and they show you in all the counties, like in Arizona, you go to Pew, you go to Arizona, it'll show you all the places that don't even have a dentist. Would you tell her, go to that town? I mean, it doesn't have a dentist. They got, I know, or would you say, I know you're single. I know you don't want to live in that shithole town. Stay in Scottsdale. So the question is, do demographics matter or not?
Howard, I would say to him or her, can you help?
Well, let's just say it's him, because we want what's best for the dentist.
Okay, so I would say
that was a joke.
I know. I would say to him, why do you think you need to have a mate? That would be the first thing I say. Can you help me to understand why you think you need to have a mate? Okay, other than children, is there some other thing I'm missing? Okay, but demographics are very, very important, and we know, Tom Snyder is a very long time friend of mine, and he's an expert in transitions, and he's talked about this for years, how the rural areas.
Who's this?
Dr. Tom Snyder.
Oh, Tom Snyder. Okay.
Yeah. And, I moved back to Ohio, Barnesville, Ohio, population 4,200, where I was born and raised, foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And so, yes, I know that those are really prime areas to immediately start a business. I mean, dentists who want to go to La Jolla, California, or San Diego, California, the rent is sky high, and there's a gazillion dentists in San Diego County or Orange County.
Going back to your childhood and looking back, would you say that Sally McKenzie is the coal miner's daughter of dentistry? Is she Loretta Lynn, or do you see yourself as Sissy Spacek?
Oh gosh, that's interesting. I think Sissy Spacek.
You think Sissy Spacek? God, those are just. I was reading a report the other day where you just. Okay, so I have a friend that has never had a drink because his dad was an alcoholic and was abusive to him and his mother. I have another friend who's a drunk, and he blames it because his dad was a drunk. It's like, dude, come on. I read a study the other day about economics that actually it looks like more people are successful that come out of deep poverty than more people are successful that come out of money. And I was reading this deal, and it's done by 2 PhD economists. They said, you're better off being a coal miner's daughter and getting married at 13 than being rich and famous and having a little pink BMW when you're 16. Yeah. Agree or disagree?
Well, I can only speak for myself, coming from nothing. And still to this day, I only have a high school education. I'm not college educated. But my gifts are, I believe my gifts to be God-given. And I believe that having to fight and survive and struggle helps to build character, of the person. And I'm very, very proud of the fact, I'm going to say, I don't usually talk about myself, but I am very proud of the fact that I was just awarded the Barnesville Area Education Foundation Hall of Fame Award for this year. So there will be a plaque in Barnesville High School where I went with my picture, and I'm one of the few women, and I'm one of the few that to get this that doesn't have a college education. So I'm happy. I'm real proud of myself.
Well, will you send me the whole write-up and everything so I can push that out on social media?
I will. Yes, I will.
Congratulations, Sal.
Thank you. Yeah, just when you think you can't accomplish, it was the same thing like when I was devastated with the DSO situation in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I moved to California. Just when you think you have accomplished everything in your career, it was shortly after that then that I was, awarded the endorsement by the California Dental Association. So I was a carpetbagger, basically, that came in from out of state to California, and there were other people who had long time, consulting businesses there that I beat out. And so, what goes around comes around. There's no, you work hard and it will, and help others and help people. It will come back to you. It does.
Last question, because we went over an hour. In fact, we're coming up on 2. So sorry. Thanks for staying on me for an extra hour. My gosh. But last but not least, one final question. Number one, was there something you thought we should have talked about today that we didn't talk about?
I can't think of anything. No.
Okay. All right. And number two is you got that California Dental Association speaking endorsement or whatever, and now the environment of PC, politically correct. All my fans that I listen to that go speak in universities say they won't go back to universities anymore because they're, the backlash, the protesting. You can't say a joke. You can't say this. I never gave a shit about that. I mean, I knew when I was going to do a podcast, I had to call it Dentistry Uncensored because I'm me. I'm trapped in my own head, stuck on a rock called Earth. But what do you think of people who, when Jon Stewart and Chris Rock and Seinfeld say, I can't even go to a university and play because if I say darn shit or whatever, stuff's crazy. I've never been politically correct. I mean, I haven't got endorsed by any associations, but I have had 2 pass a deal that I can never come back. That was Rhode Island and Missouri. You got endorsed by the CDA. I had 2 different societies say you can't come back. What do you think of that? What do you think of that format style? I mean, there's a lot of young podcasters, a lot of young speakers, that are coming out of the bullpen that are going to crush it. And they're always asking me, is it cool to just be you and authentic and say an offhanded joke? Like when you said, I offer, or God, when you got that award, you said, thanks to God. You mentioned God. And you and I both know my 2 older sisters are nuns, and every time they tell me I'm doing something wrong, and I always say, well, if I don't do something wrong, then God died for nothing. I mean, I gotta give him a reason that he had to be died, and I'm that reason. What would you coach them if they want to be the next Sally McKenzie on the speaker circuit and have a podcast and a speaking career? Do they do more PC and just try to toe the line in the middle? Is it okay to be a Howard Stern or whatever and be talk crazy, or what advice would you give them?
Well, I think that it's sad that we're kind of being censored and forced to be as politically correct as they want us to be. I've just never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I am very opinionated about people in dentistry. Some people, probably a minor amount of people in dentistry, that take advantage of dentists. And I don't think that it's fair. I don't think that it's right. And I don't have respect for those people because of that. But my advice and yes, you are who you are, and look how successful you have been. I remember the first time I heard you speak in Columbus, Ohio, and I don't remember now, but obviously you ripped off some things that were just like, oh my gosh. But I loved it because that's kind of who I am too, as well. I call it like it is. And So I think that if they, I think that being certainly speaking from your heart and being honest, that comes across to the viewers. I think that they have. I think that people are a little more tuned in to bullshit than what they ever used to be. So I think that the dental community is a smart dental community, and I think that they know when that you don't have the experience, you haven't been in dentistry, and you cannot what is that? You can't walk the talk. You've got the talk, but you can't walk it. Okay, so I think that they need to have the experience, and I think that they need to be honest and forthcoming to the dental community, and I think it'll come again. Whatever you throw out there, goes around, comes around. But anybody who thinks that they're just trying to do that to make a quick buck off of a dentist, you might get people to drink the Kool-Aid, in the beginning, but it will come back and you will go down, period.
Well, on that note, Sally, it was just a phenomenal honor to podcast you. I love you to death. I always have. You've done so much just for selfish me, my team. I mean, we talk about you all the time, especially
Yeah.
if it comes to strategy, decision making, and the girls always remind me what you would do and tell me to go shut up and sit in the corner and put my dunce hat back on. So thank you for all that you've done for me. If someone's struggling, needs help, needs more, you said go to McKenzieManagement.com. The dentistnetwork.net is the Angie's List of dentistry, and then practicemanagementlearning.com is 60 webinars. Sally, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I swear to God, at noon today, that check will be there.
I can't wait, Howard. I love you too.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.